Assalamualaikum. We are from Group LUCIDA and we will present on whether Ramly Burger, a company from Malaysia, should expand its business in the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates, or UAE, is a federation of 7 emirates, which are the Emirates of Abu Dhabi, Ajman, Dubai, Fujairah, Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah, and Al Quwain. It's a country located on the southeast end of the Arabian Peninsula. When all these emirates unite together on the 2nd of December in 1971, the buildings, the education, and jobs have changed, but the traditions and values remain the same. The UAE has a rich history. Sheikh Zayed was the one who thought of the idea of the union, and he has successfully achieved to change the UAE from a harsh desert into a green paradise. And since then, the UAE has developed significantly. Today, it's home to one of the world's tallest buildings, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. The UAE economy is open and active, which means that it has a diverse society. While its population is made up of many different nationalities and religions, Islam is its official religion and it has had a prominent influence on local music, architecture, lifestyle, and especially cuisine. Now, we are going to examine the country's cross-cultural risk, the country risk, the currency and financial risk, as well as their commercial risk, and see whether Malaysia's famous Ramly Burger should expand its business in the United Arab Emirates.
Cross-cultural risk that will be faced by Ramly. In my opinion, Ramly will experience a moderate cross-cultural risk. This is due to the fact that there are similarities between the culture of UAE and Malaysia, as well as there are many benefits that Ramly can gain due to UAE's culture. Firstly, majority of UAE's populations are Muslims, approximately 76%, and Islam is the official state religion of UAE. So all social matters and values of the country are driven by the Sharia law, and as prescribed by the Sharia, it is a must for Muslims to take halal food only. Therefore, Ramly fulfills the consumer's needs since Ramly's main aim is to produce halal, clean, and quality Western-like fast food. Secondly, fish and seafood is a mainstay of the UAE's diet, and meats with preference of lamb, goat, and chicken are used mostly in Emirates cuisines, so Ramly has included these choices of food in their production. Moreover, UAE is open to diverse food. Ramly products will be accepted well since UAE is the home of diverse consumers with over 200 nationalities. Next, as for UAE's negotiation style, the Emirates prefer to have good personal relationship with another party because good personal relationship is important since it leads to trust. Business is conducted on the basis of trust in UAE. Moreover, the Emirates are event-driven rather than time-driven. So rushing to build relationship with the Emirates will result in risking the business relationship and trust. So this negotiation style by the Emirates is quite similar to the Malays. As for the risk, Ramly might face language barriers since Arabic is the official language of the UAE, whereas Ramly is a Malay company. Therefore, a skillful translator should be hired to prevent miscommunication that might happen during the production management. Moreover, UAE nationals are stereotyped as the ones who prefer public sector jobs because of better salaries, less working hours, and better incentives. They are also looked upon as the ones that lack technical skills, competency, work ethics, and are incompetent to perform their appointed jobs. So this negative stereotype is shared by the UAE nationals themselves. This is considered as a risk due to the possibility of insufficient number of workers as well as poor quality production that might be faced by Ramly outlets that may be opened in that country.
For Ramly Burger to run a successful F&B business in the UAE, there are multiple factors and challenges that needed to be considered. We have compiled a list of top 4 challenges faced by business operators in the UAE as a guide for Ramly Burger. First, high competition. The UAE food service market comprises a large number of regional and international players among other local players. According to the KPMG's analysis, Dubai has a large restaurant footprint with over 2,900 restaurants per million residents. The growing variety of new restaurant concepts have further raised the competition in the F&B sector. Additionally, there is an increased competition among the operators based on pricing and quality of food service. The flourishing metropolitan areas of the UAE make it one of the most important economic centers of the Middle East. The country's unique position has attracted many restaurant operators thanks to its evolving economy and shifting demographics. Low entry barriers and conducive business environment have resulted in too many service providers crowding the restaurant space. Second, real estate costs. For restaurant operators, real estate rental is a significant cost component and accounts for a substantial percentage of the total revenue. Food service operators in Dubai bear hefty rental costs, where the average cost of opening a small and independent restaurant in Dubai ranges from 500,000 to 1.25 million dirham depending on the restaurant size and leasing costs. The figures are based on an approximate restaurant space ranging between 500 and 1,200 square mile. Cost capital, working capital, and rent comprises 78% of the total money outflow. Third, high food costs. The UAE's harsh climate and limited arable land offer little opportunity for food production. Over 80% of the food is imported. Though the cost of food has decreased by 1.1%, the food quantities are also shrinking. The United Arab Emirates food inflation is projected to trend around 2% in 2021. Moreover, the cost of living in the United Arab Emirates is more expensive than in 83% of countries of the world, putting a direct impact on food costs. Lastly, high employee turnover rate. While retaining customers is itself a challenging process, most restaurants in the UAE face a bigger challenge: retaining the staff. In the UAE, the F&B industry experiences one of the most highest employee turnover rates as employees have an abundance of options to move to. Even though there is no shortage in the supply of labor and the demand for professionals, an increased competition have stirred the industry enough to raise staff attrition levels. According to a report, a staggering of 83% of the UAE workers may consider resigning from their current position to seek better opportunities with another employer. A high attrition rate has an adverse effect on the performance of other employees and considerably hits the restaurant's finances.
As Ramly plans to expand to United Arab Emirates, UAE, it must take into consideration one of the 4 risks of international business, which is currency and financial risk. Currency risk can be seen as risks that arise from changes in relative valuation of currencies. When Ramly and profit from UAE subsidiary, it will be incorporated into the parent company in home country Malaysia. Therefore, it must convert its profit to local money, Malaysian ringgit. The exchange rate at the time the profits are exchanged will influence the amount of profit or loss the company has made. As of June 5th, the exchange rate of 1 Malaysian ringgit is equals to 0.84 UAE dirham. Even though the exchange rate of UAE is less compared to Malaysia, UAE dirham is among the world's most stable currencies. With stable currency, it improves the accuracy of financial planning. Measuring and managing exchange rate risk exposure is important for reducing Ramly's vulnerabilities. from major exchange rate movements. Unfavorable movement in exchange rate can be costly. However, Ramli can use currency hedging to offset currency fluctuations to protect itself against potentially adverse movements in the exchange rate. Moreover, Ramli can benefit from Malaysia double tax treaty with UAE to avoid national double taxation of the same income by the two countries. Ramli should also note that UAE does not have a federal companies income tax (TIC). Instead, TIC is determined on a territorial basis under the respective tax decree issued by the government of each Emirates.
And now, moving swiftly on, UAE commercial. As oil prices decline, cutting the UAE's oil revenues significantly. The non-oil economy suffered from several declines as well. For example, tourism, aviation, and trade and logistics sectors. The downturn made economic projections uncertain. Therefore, Ramli must take into account those commercial risks before making the decision to expand its business in the UAE.
Should Ramli enter UAE? Ramli Group future internationalization plans include Korea, Hong Kong and Middle Eastern nations. In terms of halal product choice, Ramli Group should target Middle Eastern nations with a majority Muslim population, as well as the tourism business in those regions. The first one is food industry growth. Ramli Group could explore expanding the Middle East. According to the studies, because the region's population and tourist boom will increase food demand and consumption from 2022 to 2024. Food imports in the Gulf are expected to quadruple 53.1 billion by 2020. Ramli Group should select the UAE as the Middle East country since the UAE is home to over 200 nationalities and the food and the beverage sector is driven by its diversified customer groups that are ready for a wide choice of cuisine. The number of visitors visiting the UAE increased year after year. This tendency is beneficial to the food business since the opportunity to enter new market is constantly present. Strategic geographical factor. Another reason Ramly Group should select UAE as a country to expand into it is strategic geographical position. The Middle East is an ideal site for East-West trade and the exchange of commodities and cultures. The United Arab Emirates (UAE) is the primary re-export center for food goods imported from Africa, Eurasia, and South America. The UAE also possesses the largest commercial ports, making it ideal for high-capacity cargo activity. Another appealing element for Ramly Group to consider is the availability of the free zones in the UAE. The next one is food demand and halal product. The demand for frozen food is increasing in the Gulf Cooperation Council GCC nations, including the UAE. Demand is increasing owing to customers' busy lifestyles, more women joining the workforce, and the changes in the consumer taste. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Egypt are the leading importers of fresh and frozen food, indicating a promising future for the fresh goods industries. Halal cuisine is crucial for Muslims in a nation with a Muslim majority population. Food with halal certification from another Islamic nation should be embraced by the people. So, based on the discussion, what Ramly should do there? Either exporting, importing, manufacturing, or other things. We encourage Ramly Group to export their product. Exports are extremely significant in modern economies because they provide individuals and businesses with many additional markets for their goods. We have 3 points to elaborate about exporting the market. The first benefit to export to UAE is extending to a global scale. Access to a worldwide market of purchases is one of the key advantages of exporting. Exporting your products and becoming global exposes your company to more than 95% of the world population. Next is increased profit. Profitability is another advantage of exporting. Access to a worldwide buyer market implies that sales will rise, resulting in more profitability. This is especially true when direct exporting is used. With the rise of e-commerce, selling your goods online has never been simpler. The last one is increased competitiveness and market share. Entering a global market increases the number of rivals. This, however, has the added benefit of driving your organization to become more efficient and, as a result, more competitive. The last point is risk mitigation. Another advantage is introducing your products to overseas market and customer broadness your client base, reducing your reliance on a vulnerability to change in a single home economy. Exporting shields your company from variation in a domestic economic cycle, preserving both income and personal. So that's all from our group. This is our resources. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.
My name is Nurul Nazifa binti Hairil Yahri with the metric number 1812248, and I presented on the country's background and its key information.
My name is Nur Nadia binti Nazuki with metric number 2015258, and in this video, I explain about the cross-cultural risk that Ramly will face.
My name is Iman Karim Aswad with the matrix number 1914894, and I presented on the country factors that results in the country risk.
Assalamualaikum, I'm Azra, metric number 1927980. I presented on currency and financial risk.
Assalamualaikum. My name is bin Ayyan Amin, metric number 1919553. I presented commercial risk.
Assalamualaikum, I'm the group leader. My name is Shaiful Ahmad bin Shafrizat with metric number 1829017. In this video, I'm presenting on should Ramly enter the country or not. So that's all from our group. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.